All right, so hey everybody, this is the second week of Gimbal Labs Book Club. It's actually the third time we are getting together because we meet twice each week. I'm going to close this before we start to hear an echo. Good. So we meet weekly on Wednesdays and or Thursdays. Nobody should feel like you have to attend both meetings. The reason we're doing this twice a week is because there's no one time that works for everybody who wants to be here. So welcome to the Wednesday session. We will also meet tomorrow at 1600 UTC, and all are welcome there. I'm excited to be attending both. I shared some assumptions last week. We think this book is going to inspire some big conversations, and therefore 1 hour is not enough. So it's helpful to me to remind myself that this is a starting point. Right? We're not going to do everything we probably want to in this time. And it's funny that the book talks, sorry, I'm jumping around here. The book talks about this, right? This idea that a meeting like this probably needs 2 to 3 hours. So you can read Adrienne Marie Brown's opinion on this topic in the facilitation guide near the end of the book. With this in mind, and recognizing that, yes, this probably does need to be a longer meeting if we were going to really deliver on all of its promise, but also that all of us are busy and probably a little bit overcommitted. Here's some rules that we can revisit sometime if necessary, but we had consensus on this last week. Everybody is welcome to participate or just listen. Okay, so don't feel like you got to talk if you're here. We're going to honor the 1 minute meeting length. So with 10 minutes left in every meeting, the facilitator, or if the facilitator forgets, I'll jump in. We're going to spend the last 10 minutes moving to next steps. We can keep the Zoom room open after the 1 hour mark, right? Because a lot of us like to have those, 3 to 4 hour conversations. But let's keep the formal length to 1 hour and then leave the room open for anybody who wants to stick around. Breakout rooms. Oh, I thought breakout rooms were enabled here. Yeah, they are. Okay, I just got to turn them on. So breakout rooms are enabled now. And just in case you ever need to go off and have a side conversation, right? You start digging into something with somebody else here. If you ever need a breakout room for any time, for any reason, don't have to ask for permission. You can just use one. And finally, everyone is invited to facilitate a meeting. I really see this as a chance for us to build up together our leadership capacity. So Matthias, thanks for taking on facilitation today. I'll take tomorrow, but unless somebody else wants to throw their name in here last minute. Tavo's got both of next week's meetings, Juan the week following, and Nori the week after that. There's a loose outline of what sections of the book we might cover, but we don't have to stick to this, okay? So if you start to see that this schedule right here is not working for us, feel free to raise that as a topic at a meeting, and we can rearrange it as necessary. Any questions about logistics before I hand it off to Matthias for the day? Oh, hey, I'm not getting sound from you.
Out now.
Good.
Good. Yeah, not a question, just a quick observation. I'm not sure whether you noticed it or whether I misheard, but I think you might have said we honor or we endeavor to honor the 1 minute meeting length.
Oh, yeah.
Which I just found hilarious for some reason. But obviously it's 1 hour.
You got to overcompensate to achieve, you shoot for the moon and then what is it? You shoot for the stars, you land on the moon, something like that.
Something like that. Exactly. Yeah. I like that.
All right. 1 minute book club meetings, cool. Baby. That's what we're doing.
It's over. All right, cool.
Cool. So this link, let me share it one more time. Matthias, would you prefer to share your screen as you lead facilitation, or do you want me to just keep this up?
I don't have a preference, to be honest.
Here, let me let you take it fully then.
All
I'll do
right.
this. Make sure, yep, you should be able to share.
Okay.
Cool. And thanks for taking this
Alternatively,
on.
James, you could just click on Matthias's icon and follow him around.
Oh, right on. I could just do that too.
Yeah.
He's there now. We got this.
That might actually be better, but 1 second. Because my Zoom is sometimes a little bit acting up, but I think we should be okay. All right, let's try this. Okay, well, wonderful. Glad you're all here today. So today, what I thought is we are going to continue the conversation of last week, Thursday, where we covered the introduction of emergent strategy. However, we focused on how does this apply to tokenomics. So today I would like to open the scope a little bit with the text rendering experience, which James contributed as one possibility for facilitation. And in addition to the introduction, we are also covering the elements of emergent strategy today. So there's a few more pages covering pages 1 through 50. So as you can see, last week, Thursday, we already, like I said, we covered the introduction a little bit, right? We looked at certain sections in the book. What do they mean to us? And I would like to continue this work today as we have a few repeat people, but also people joining us today for the first time. So the way I would like, or the way I'm proposing this is just grab some stickies and put in significant sentences, right? So which of these sentences were significant to you, whatever that means to you, and also significant phrases and significant words. I have prepared a few frames here, and then we'll talk about it. If for whatever reason you don't want to write the stickies out themselves, but simply come off mute and voice them, that is fine as well. I also propose to include a page number so we can go back to the sentences, phrases, and words and can see what the context there was. So yeah, I would like to take a few minutes and let's start with that. Does it sound good? All right, I'm seeing thumbs up. Great.
Are we doing this silently or are we allowed to talk?
You are absolutely allowed to talk.
Okay, awesome. So I just had a quick question because I've seen the word justice being used a lot in the book. And what do you all think about what justice means? Because I'm not able to like put it in like a box.
That's an excellent question, right? Who would like to respond to that? Just come off mute and talk. That's fine.
Well, I kind of have more of a question to add to that question is do you guys believe justice is subjective or objective?
Another great follow-up question. So I will not answer these questions, but I will point out that Adrienne Murray Brown, the author of this book, is a person of color, and that matters in the context of her the country where she lives in, which is the United States of America. She's also a mediator. She's worked in restorative justice. So objectivity has been often misused to actually further injustices, while at the same time claiming that objectivity allows for greater justice. So it's an interesting tension or conflict between subjectivity and objectivity, I think. Who would like to maybe answer the question, what is meant by justice?
So I think, like in the context in which the author comes from, that's like a scope we can't address, right? I mean, we're trying to find liquidity to build. We can't really be thinking about restorative justice on this level. So in our context, like I feel like justice is really applied fairness, right? And I think we can all find that, because everybody knows when something's fair or unfair, and that's an easier standard that can be broadly understood in this context. But, I mean, this is just me. I've been watching two young puppies turn into big dogs, and when they were puppies, the big puppy, he knew what fair was, right? At certain times, he let the little puppy win, right? Because if he just constantly dogged the little dog, the little dog wouldn't play. He'd go in a corner and hide, and he wouldn't play anymore. And the world's like that. Nobody likes to play a rigged game.
That's an interesting observation, the give and take that might also play a role in the perception of fairness. And yeah, I really like this image here that was posted on the difference between equality and equity. That plays a huge role. Sometimes also phrased as equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. So that in itself is a very interesting discussion to have. So thank you, Harsher, on pointing us into the direction of thinking about justice.
I'd like to add on one thing here. Matthias, you mentioned the author's cultural background. Culture is super important, right? Because culture is our programming, and it sets our belief sets, and and so on, and so the point that I want to sort of chime in here is that justice, and also to Curtis's question, justice is I suppose there are different levels here. It's subjective to a culture, but it's also, as Steve just said, it's subjective to a smaller context of like just two individuals, right? But then there's also another level where it's objective within a culture, like do not kill, or do not eat another human being. Well, that one's probably reinforced through biology. But yeah, do not kill. Where different societies deem different actions permissible or impermissible. So yeah, culture really gives context. I say this to say, Matthias's point in the first place, historically, we have had a group of people who have gone from one place on the planet and gone to a different place on the planet for a number of reasons to exploit resources, whether those resources are material or in the form of human beings. And in the process of doing so, imposing their culture, but also justice, to others in the name of civilization or, civility. So I think there's also something, to be said for that, and to bring it to this particular context within Gimbal and tokenomics and so on, to tie to a conversation I was having earlier with Adriano. There's this kind of bifurcation within the Cardano ecosystem where you're having folks who predominantly in the Western or the Northern Hemisphere, or Global North, or whatever it's referred to as, developing technology in a way, imparting their perspective, or sort of impressing their opinion into it to a great degree, whether it's through KYC or things like OFAC and different sanctioning lists and whatnot, or even different philosophies as to how to employ usury or interest. So I think within this context, it's super important to remember that for what we're doing here within in the context of technology and rethinking money, rethinking energy in the form of money, right, or resource allocation, to be aware that there are different people of different opinions and who value different things, and so as we create a marketplace, to be aware that those inputs will be coming in, and not to just continue this mindset of, for lack of a better word, Western mentality, and kind of imposing it, whether it's through regulatory requirements, through the FATF or FATF, and sort of anti-money laundering and all these things, which are basically just the enemies of the West. Do not do any business with them because, do not make space for them, kind of thing. I spoke for far too long there, but I hope, my point, sort of came across there.
Yes, I think it did. Thank you very much. And also thank you for acknowledging, taking space, making space here. But I think what you said was very valuable. Also interesting conversation in the chat. I think one thing that I would like to point out, what Nori posted, is one of the definition of justice in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Which is the establishment of determination of rights according to the rules of law or equity. And again, the use of the word equity and explicitly not equality is important here. Great. I would like to now talk about what we've put on here on the stickies. So for the significant sentences, organic intellectuals, formal versus informal. Whoever put it on there, please tell us about what was going. Oh, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, no, it's just a point which was made on page 28, which just sort of sprung out at me, at me. It's just this idea, and again, maybe this kind of touches on the point which I just made, which is, while the scientific method has been super awesome and it has brought a lot of benefit to us as a species, I think we perhaps kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of equating civility or value and intelligence with a particular pattern of emergence, right? If you do not go to a particular brand school, or uni, etc., or even, I suppose, further back, if you didn't come from the right family, right, the right, I forget what the word is, but genes, for lack of a better word. There's this what's the word I'm looking for here? There's this idea that the value of something can be, that you can be able to assign value from the cover of the book, so to speak, right? As opposed to kind of going first principles and saying, okay, is there something of substance here? Balancing that with the superficial.
Right. It is when you said or I'm taking it as, okay, the formal part, you have to fit a certain mold, right? But that actually is just superficial, and it doesn't, tell anyone anything about the core, about the value. Is that kind of, it's very abstract on what you said there, but is that fitting the right direction? Am I understanding this correctly?
I mean, the reason why I started out with the scientific method there is, because I think there's a lot of value in it, right? The idea of reproducibility, super important, right? Because that kind of, that represents objective reality. I mean, we could get into a whole philosophical argument about what objective reality is. But for the most part, like that, if I'm able to do something and produce, a particular result, and you're able to do it independently and do the same thing, there's a lot of value to that. But then, what then happens is that systems get co-opted, where the formality, I mean, right now, we've seen Balaji Srinivasan is able to frame this really well, in terms of how the scientific institutions, or even science in general, isn't that always the case? That scientific, that it's more superficial than it is about the facts, right? We just came out of a whole public health thing, which we really saw that what was claimed to be the science was not actually, what was claimed in terms of objectivity wasn't really claimed. So it's more of a surface level thing that is an issue, and not really the actual objectivity. If it was a scientific method actually, whatever practice, then I don't think there'll be much of an issue. To just kind of put a finer point on it, I think organic intellectuals are people like Ramanujan, right? The Indian mathematician, right? He's the guy who did not, come from the opulent, Oxbridge, sort of background, but he was, he was a brilliant mind, mathematician, to the point where, I think Oxford maybe, or Cambridge, I forget which one, came across him, and they were like, hey, actually, we'll, bring you over, to come and, have a conversation, and sort of, I suppose, study as well a little bit, but I forget whether that was the case. But anyway, historically, people like him, who are of value, who are organic intellectuals, because they lack the window dressing, are not seen to be they are not seen to be intellectuals in the first place, and that denies them as individuals, but also society, of the value that they can be able to contribute.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. I think that in itself can be its own maybe even session, discussion on organic intellectuals. Wonderful. Okay, I would like to move on because I'm terrible at keeping time, so apologies for that. So nothing is wasted or a failure. Emergence is a system that makes us, Emergence is a system that makes use of everything in the iterative process. It's all data. Very nice. Who put that on there? And
well, first in Catalyst, the first thing it was all doing, at least I'm still doing the same things, writing proposals, trying to understand how to do it perfectly, and advocate that information to others, to explain what I want to do, what my plans are with the proposal, and etc. And it's an iterative process. It doesn't matter if it fails or succeeds. It's data I use for the next iteration. So my data mindset and my background has been on data wrangling on a lot. So I find both failures and successes to be very, very valuable. So that's why I captured that.
that's wonderful. Any comments on that, or is somebody there who also would have selected this sentence if it wasn't up there already? I think this is also a continuation of a point that was brought up in Thursday's session as well, right? We looked at, there was another quote which essentially said that, Juan, maybe you can help me out. I think you mentioned it, or James. I'm drawing a blank here. You know what I'm talking about?
The data quote rang a bell. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes.
I know it's hard to remember what we said about it last week. Exactly. I'm much more curious to hear from who's here, honestly. But it's, I mean, so data, the use, her use of the word data is fascinating to me, because it's like the front lines of a lot of the work we have to do in terms of maybe bending, the arc of technology towards justice. One of the first things we have to think about is data. Where does it come from? Who produces it? Who owns it? And I think we have the opportunity to ask questions about that. I'm not yet satisfied in my relationship to the data I produce as a participant in Catalyst. And I think there's room to grow there. But yeah, that's a fresh conversation.
That's an ongoing battle for objectivity within yourself, and what you're personally responsible for. Like I keep, when so much of what I've read in this book so far is, particularly this last quote you're calling out. I walk. There's some trees that I walk by pretty regular, big granddaddy trees, and a couple of them have, what are obviously children, right there at their feet growing up, and they're eaten up by fungus. These small trees, and it's kind of like the big tree saying, "Here, you eat that, not me. Eat that." Because in other situations, some of these kind of large trees are starting to get eaten up by fungus. But the really successful old tree, he's got a sapling for it and says, eat that, you know, and I don't know, I don't know how to stop myself from anthropomorphizing everything I see in the fucking forest, but I do, I mean, it's.
Yeah, mushrooms, or fungi, very, very interesting life form. Maybe we'll get to that in a bit also more. Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. So next one, what does death require from us? From me, in my longing for death, I have been rerouting in the earth, in myself, in my creativity, in my community, in my spiritual practices, honing in on work that is not only meaningful, but feels joyful, listening with less and less judgment to the ideas and efforts of others, having visions that are long-term.
Yeah, again, me, because it's there and you grow. Yeah, when let's say my life was in constraints in a way that I wasn't really from a very good background, like a financial background family, and always had to think one day ahead. And we got lucky with this blockchain stuff and investing, and then just finding work which actually paid off, and I could put it in use. And my long-term vision was that if I put that money in protocol, does that mean I pay to developers whose long-term vision is to change the world, which is and I believe the message of financial operating system, which is built by community. And this gave me freedom. And now once I got the taste of that freedom, now I'm also more aligned to listening to others and have what I'm now actually want to do with this, where I'm gonna be in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And it changes your perspective, and I think it's very important to kind of have this a long-term vision, so that you don't get bogged down in daily activities.
I see. Do I hear it or I hear that you are rerouting in community, and the closeness to the community helps you with the long-term vision as well, or that they go hand in hand? Is that it? What makes this quote significant for you, or is there something else that I'm missing?
Yeah, definitely the community building and staying in this group, seeing you is part of that. That's I like to spend these free times with you and together think with that. And so I wouldn't really put in a way like you said it, but yes, the community here we're building and the people we're meeting, and then finding ourselves on a similar trajectory, and trusting that we want to help others, not ourselves, but make this what we do meaningful for the future. I think that is very important. And that's
Thank you.
part.
And I see some hearts on there. I'm also just seeing Juan on the screen. I would suggest, or I would think that he might also relate to this quote and finds the significant. I'm also reading, for balance reason, I also see rerouting in the earth. I heard thoughts or reports on walking in the forest. So is there anybody else who thinks this is a significant quote for themselves? And if so, what makes this significant for you? I see some head nodding.
I'll
can we
speak.
also hear some voices? Yes, please.
Yes, you can hear me, I hope. It's Dan. Yeah, having reread that, or having not yet read it in the book maybe, but reading through it and the longing for the depth and the rerouting in the earth and in myself strikes a big chord with me. I moved away from a very stressful job as a heating engineer, and most of you guys know we now live on a canal boat in the UK. So it's a completely different life, and it's much more. There's much more nature around. In terms of community, there is a really lovely boating community, but because we're all transient, you might get to spend a couple of days moored up somewhere and meet some people and have a laugh. But I feel much more connected to this community. So yeah, this community here is the one that I'm feeling more and more at home with. I'm going to shut up now because I'm starting to ramble.
Thank you. It's a very nice sentiment. I appreciate it.
I also threw a heart on there just to share. When you were reading it out loud, I heard the word depth as the word death, as in to die. And it actually makes that sentence more profound if you change that word. And it really brought to mind, like, we all have very fleeting time on this planet. And if you really want to get in touch and acknowledge your own mortality, how do you want to live your life? And it is through more depth. I think diving deep into these things is super important. And we don't have endless amounts of time on this planet. So how do you want to make it more meaningful?
Thank you. I'm glad I could contribute a beautiful mistake.
Profound.
Yeah.
Heavy, Nori, and
What does
right on.
death require from us?
Yeah, like what will your death need you to provide? A lot of us get to this point of wanting to make that transition from our day job into something that feels better and more sustainable. And I think for a lot of people, and for myself on a lot of levels, it feels like dying to quit one thing that's been providing for you. Because I know times of lack and times of great insecurity, but I didn't have to deal with supporting children or dependents or a family at that point. So I never had to worry about that as a loss. But now I find a great deal of very deep fear in leaving something that's not sure, something that's somewhat sure. I mean, also miserable, sure to be miserable for things that aren't sure yet. And I think that transition, a lot of people would jump on if there was some sort of a pathway that was more approachable and reliable. I would say that the author is in kind of a unique position, though, being a director of a nonprofit organization that deals with activism, because that's sort of a transient environment anyway. You know, there's jobs come and go in that whole world. So, yeah, I think things change a lot when you have a family. And so committing yourself to the life that you want to lead is beautiful and admirable, but how close to the cliff do you have to get before it's actually feels okay to jump over, and jump over into what? That's freaky, but more, that's a great point, Nora. Thanks.
Wonderful. Yeah, and sometimes I think we might jump into crisis, right? But every crisis is an opportunity. What we pay attention grows. What we pay attention to, I believe. Okay, what we pay attention grows. I choose to pay attention to positive opportunities. We'll put Discord on here.
That was me, Matthias. And I apologize. I mean, not apologize, but I happened to be a little bit of multitasking here. I couldn't log in on time. I had to. Anyway, now let's go to this. So yeah, that was the reason. Okay, I think you know what that those are not specific quotes from her, but part of what I understood or got from the book, from that chapter, actually in the section that talks about dandelions after that as the sixth element. And yes, you know, we all experience this fact that every crisis provides opportunities, but it depends on who's watching and what mindset the person has. So she actually mentioned specifically that she pays attention to the positive opportunities that grow out of the crisis. And this is the right moment to talk about that, because we are experiencing changes in many directions. And tokenomics is one of the areas that is on the plate, you know. So there is nothing but opportunities. I think that actually is part of me in terms of me as a human being. I read Norman Vincent Peale and decided that I will pay attention to opportunities and to positive. And I will start talking about words that help me grow my certainty that the future is bright. Something that is difficult when you have certain challenges in life and certain barriers. And you know, when you are in a class and you don't understand anything, but you have to be positive, that eventually will. But not only that, but the reality of the social turmoil that we live right now requires a huge amount of positive attitude and you know, mindset that brings on nothing but solutions. That's what, you know, that was the part of the book that touched me the most. And not to mention that it was part of the dandelion session, which is another concept that we can, you know, all of us can do a little bit of work trying to shoot all those parachutes out of there and try to sit and plant those seeds of looking at the world in a positive way. Back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of words that come to mind or that were also explicitly mentioned in the dandelion section was resistance, first and foremost, resilience, I think decentralization also, and some others. So yeah, that was very interesting. Okay, I'm trying to be mindful of the time, and I apologize. I feel like I lacked my goal of including everyone today. So maybe this talks a little bit about that. We tend to, not necessarily. So we tend to slip out of togetherness the way we slip out of the womb, bloody and messy and surprised to be alone. What was that?
Yeah, I put that in there. I have experienced that, you know, many times. You know, diving into something, you know, that I thought was going to be long-term connection, and sometimes it was friends, you know, and then I found out because they moved away, they weren't interested in being friends with me anymore. You know, like I had to. It was like the third time I moved that I realized that the way people responded, you know, that I thought were my best friends where I just left, you know, that in a particular way they felt like I was rejecting them, you know, and they didn't really see much point in having any interest in what it was that made me want to leave, you know, made me want to go someplace else, you know, and that was you know, that feeling. But you know, you know, in those moments in my life, I couldn't care, right? Because where I was, even with those friends, you know, was, you know, watching the same TV shows repeat themselves over and over and over again. You know, you know, and that says nothing about marriages. You know, you know, like you go all in with a woman or any kind of partner, and at some point they say "fuck you." You know, I mean, I left my country for you, and you say that to me, really? Talk about cold and wet and alone. You know, and you know, I think, you know, to try to understand how that feeds, you know, what I hope for out of sound tokenomics is that that thing I didn't find in personal relationships, right? You know, that, you know, it's maybe somehow through disinflationary economics and true value creation, you know, that I don't lose something I've built just because my situation changed. You know, and I, you know, that's, I couldn't have said that last month. I couldn't have, you know, when I read this, I couldn't have said that 2 years ago when I went all in on Cardano. But, you know, through this process, you know, I kind of understand, you know, myself a little bit better. Just like, what is it I'm doing, sitting here hours and hours every week with you guys? You know, and it's that hope that, you know, it's not just, you know, build and then watch it all burn up, you know, but that hope that you can build something that's actually going to last for a while, and that you can, you know, build more off of in different ways. You know, and I you know, because I think that's what's been stolen from us societally, you know, because of economics. You know, they've taken that from all of us. You know, we own our property outright, and no economic institution gives a flying fuck about that, because they just want more. They don't want good collateral. They want a constant stream of income. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for sharing. Again, I apologize for not getting to nearly close of all of these very interesting quotes, and more importantly, your thoughts and why these quotes have been significant to you and what we've been thinking about. So, but it's all data for me as well. So I'll go back with that and think about how I can improve my facilitation. And with that, I'll hand it off to James for the next elegant step. Thank you.
Matthias, thank you. And to tie it back to justice, we put you in an unjust situation where by trying to squeeze a 3-hour meeting into a 1-hour block, right? So this is the dance we get to do here. We have the systemic injustice of trying to really plan around our busy lives for these big conversations. And thank you for going there. I know that 1 hour isn't enough, and really appreciate you all for spending that time. And Steve, you know, I'm going to be thinking about what you just said for a couple of days, but one of the first things it made me think of is forgiveness. And this, I know that when I feel safe in a situation, I start to want to be like, hey, what else is out there? Can I go look? And inevitably like alienate somebody. And then I'm like, oh shoot, shouldn't have done that, you know. Here, I'm back. And it makes me think, on the one hand, if we're talking tokenomics, you want to build a system that's as resilient as dandelions. On the other hand, is it possible? I have no idea. I'm going to carry this question with me tonight. Is it possible to build forgiveness into tokenomics? Like to build in an assumption that we're all going to act like adolescents at some point and, you know, like drift away, abandon our community that helped us become who we are for a minute. Like, can we build a tokenomics that expects that and has like a, you know, hey, yeah, you needed your time to be out there bloody and messy and alone, and we're just so glad you're back now, you know. So I don't know. I know that's not the only thing you're talking about, but I can't help thinking this quote was really moved me, and kind of thinking from this tokenomics perspective is one way to think about that. So we kind of have this hope of ending on time each week, and I want to send it back to A for last words, but I just want to put this up on the screen as we close out. There's a section of the board for keeping next most elegant steps, and I'll admit I'm still building out some routines for the year, keeping up with all that we're doing here together, while also trying to maximize focused time to build things. So I haven't taken my next steps yet, but I still want these to happen. And, you know, the general thing we talked about at the end of last week's meeting is how do we leave something? How do we make this Miro board an artifact that somebody else who might be curious about what we're doing can look at and have some ideas, right? They won't get the full experience of these meetings, but they will get something that maybe inspires them or moves them forward. So that's something I'm thinking about. And the main reason I haven't done anything to the board yet is I don't know yet how to do that. So anybody who wants to help think about that, this is something that we can revisit, especially as we start to take these ideas and funnel them towards tokenomics. Are there any questions about the next steps that are currently here? You know, the conversations we've had so far, or does anybody have any next steps they'd like to add to the board, just as a holding spot for now?
What is assessment cookie?
Yeah, that was the thing we didn't get to last week. This is from page 184 of the book, and I'd like to run this tomorrow. You know, just get a little snapshot. So we'll jump into tomorrow's meeting by taking a chance to do this activity that's from the facilitation guide in the book, and see what happens, and see if we can connect our answers to these questions to a conversation about incentives and tokenomics, therefore, and where we want to be. Other questions?
Can we drop recordings of the previous sessions onto this Miro?
Yes.
Just so that people can explore and watch, maybe?
Yeah. Good.
I think one area that we can improve for next sessions will be to kind of post on the Miro board kind of the guidelines for the meeting, so that we don't have to say it. You don't have to say that every time, but people just conduct people to go to the Miro to read them. So it will be, there will be much more time available for discussion, I think.
Excellent. Yeah. Clearly post guidelines. Yeah, I don't want to have to introduce that every time. That's right. Very
But
good.
on the other hand, the new people would like to know. So very good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for this, and thank you for managing the time. We'll be back at it tomorrow for anybody who can make it. That meeting is at a different time. It starts at, shoot, I want to say it right.
16
16.
UTC.
See you
Yeah.
soon. You're around.
16
So we'll see you
UTC.
there. Yeah, 16 UTC. Great. A, you wanna take us out with last words?
It's 4 p.m.
No pressure, right?
Not at all.
Just say bye.
Only 7 billion people will watch in several years.
Exactly. James timed it perfectly. Then everyone will just leave now, and A will be the only one speaking to himself. Joking. Yeah, no.
He's always teaching.
I'm always yeah, no, that yeah, it's unfortunate that we didn't manage to get to all the post-its. However, I feel like what we did touch on was really wonderful and beautiful, and particularly and also I feel like I spoke for far too long, with my first stick it, but nonetheless, I think a number of folks have kind of brought it back to a really interesting and rich and human point. The points that Steve made, right there, kind of, related to, again, to refer to this again, an earlier conversation I was having with Q, Roberto, and Adriano, which is they're kind of two factions within Cardano that I've come to to see. One is focused on doing things right and difficult, and as James said yesterday, it feels every day like we are the fools who are losing the war, right? Because all these little battles are being won by people who are opting for for the easier, the more centralized routes. So I feel like what Steve just kind of touched on, and also Dan, right, when he said that the boating community, or that you interact with every now and then, physically there isn't that much of a connection. But then here, where you've opted to be in this particular space and engaging with with people, again, you have elected to, right? This is not like school, like we spoke about last week, or it was last week or yesterday, where you're forced to do something, right? Where the joy of learning just kind of gets sucked out. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of wanted to share my my thoughts around this, about how the value of self-choice, right? Those who are here out of their own volition and keep coming, and at the end of the day, there's a human thing. It's not about number go up, right? As Lockhart beautifully put it, like the fact that someone can just not only take away all the effort and energy that you've put into stuff, which is important, but also break your heart at the same time, right? It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It can be other types of relationships. So yeah, I just want to sort of quickly share that, and thank everyone for contributing today. Thank you.
Those were some damn good last words. Thanks, A. Thanks y'all for being the richness of all of this shit we're trying to do right now. Appreciate you all. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow and for the next adventure. Have a good night.
To the Rebel
Good evening.
Alliance.
Thanks, everybody.
Later.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.